Chandler Co-op, like a lot of cooperatives, charges farmers for the inputs they sell them and the acres they spray those inputs on. The farmer gets protection for their crop, and the co-op is compensated for these products and their time and service. But what happens to this whole model when technology enables us to drastically reduce the amount of chemical sprayed and the number of acres covered?
Let's say we end up spraying 40% of the field. In reality, that's like taking 60% off of that product. We're going down a path of opportunity and more yield versus selling the jug of chemical for minimal margin.
Nick Einck is the Director of Agronomy at Chandler Co-op. Through the use of Sentera's Smart Script weeds and precision sprayers like John Deere See & Spray, they're able to unlock some huge savings for farmers on their chemical bills. But what does this do then to the ag retail business model?
That was one of the pushbacks I got from people in the industry was, how are you going to make up for the margin you're going to lose on the non-sprayed acre? So through lots of conversation, we decided to go down the savings share path, and it's been good so far.
Nick Einck talks about an innovative business model to help farmers yield more while spending less on today's Future of Agriculture podcast. Hello, fellow ag nerd. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Future of Agriculture. My name is Tim Hamrich, and every week you and I get to hear from the founders, farmers, innovators, and investors, the people shaping the future of the ag industry. Today's episode is another installment of our Tech-Enabled Advisor series. The idea here is to better understand ag tech through the lens of the buyer and the user of that technology rather than just the entrepreneurs or investors behind it. I've received some real positive feedback from many of you since we relaunched this series last month. By talking to the buyers rather than the sellers of tech, we get an unfiltered introduction into the technology and, most importantly, the value it provides to the industry. So to do this, I partner with a company, and together we invite one of their customers onto the show. The catch, though, is that they're not allowed to script these individuals or dictate in any way what they're going to say or even edit the interview after it's recorded. It all has to be real and unfiltered. So I'm very pleased that today's episode features Nick Einck of Chandler Co-op and is produced in partnership with Sentera. Sentera is a leading provider of remote imagery solutions. Their industry-leading cameras are compatible with most major drone platforms and enable farmers and crop scouts to efficiently capture high-resolution data. Their capabilities and field agent software tools help farmers and agronomists assess plant-level health, identify stressors, and take action. Also, their customized herbicide prescription, Smart Script Weeds, which we will talk about here today, can be delivered to sprayers with individual nozzle control. So drones equipped with Sentera technology fly over fields at high speeds and generate these high-resolution images. The images are then processed using proprietary deep learning algorithms to identify the exact location of specific weeds and generate a weed map. This map becomes a targeted prescription for how much product a farmer needs to load into their sprayer, saving money and minimizing waste. This past May, John Deere announced that they were acquiring Sentera. So I'm really excited to partner with them for this episode, which is a really interesting deep dive into how innovative technology like this, combined with something like See & Spray, can change the game. And right before we dive in, some quick background on Nick. Nick Einck is the Director of Agronomy at Chandler Co-op, a farmer-owned cooperative serving more than 900 customers and providing agronomic services across over 100,000 acres in southwest Minnesota. He began his career at Chandler as an intern and seed manager, before then spending nearly a decade with Monsanto and Bayer, gaining deep expertise in agronomy, product development, and grower engagement across the Midwest. Nick returned to Chandler in October of 2024, bringing both retail and industry experience to help advance the co-op's agronomic strategy. Today, he leads a multi-location agronomy team focused on leveraging tech-enabled tools, things like Smart Script, to help growers make faster, more informed decisions and drive greater return from every acre. I'm going to drop in the conversation here where Nick is talking about some of the current challenges facing the ag economy right now and how that impacts not only farmers, but also their local cooperative.
Agriculture is a great place to be no matter what, right? But what I would tell you is this year it feels a little different. We have a very good opportunity to get a great crop, probably one of the best ones that we've seen in Southwest Minnesota. But at the same time, we're looking at input costs costing astronomical amounts of money and looking at a depressed market price for the corn and soybeans that they're going to go and sell. So that doesn't make for a very non-stressful environment, right? So I think it's crucial for us to utilize every tool that we have to ensure that our farmer has the outcomes that they best can hope for. And we're helping them through those, through this time where things aren't as rosy as they used to be. We look for opportunity for things to turn around, and eventually they will. But I do believe that using technology to help us with that plan definitely is part of it.
And you kind of alluded to, had some learnings from your time with Monsanto, now Bayer, that you thought, you could kind of bring back to this director of agronomy role at Chandler. Can you talk about what some of those learnings were and what was exciting for you to come back and try to implement some of these things?
When I was a top producer account manager across the state of Minnesota, it was a really fun job because I got to meet very dynamic people running great businesses from Fergus Falls all the way over to Cannon Falls. And, at the end of the day, the farmers, whether we're looking at their size as a segmentation, they're farmers that need inputs and advice just like anybody does, right? So one of the things that I've learned, though, from that group of customers was they are looking to become more efficient, and they are looking at their bottom line very intensely. And, sometimes I've heard the saying, saving yourself to prosperity is never going to happen. But at the end of the day, if you're going to use technology such as Sentera or John Deere See and Spray, that is one of the tools that could help us. So seeing the way they operated and thinking about my current role and the company that I currently work for, how we can implement that with our customers has been really good.
And so were your customers, when you were with your previous role, kind of the top producers, were they already implementing this technology? You could just see how it fit in their thought process, or kind of talk about those observations?
There was a couple of accounts where they were very adaptable to a strip till, when it comes to fertilizer, making sure that they're putting fertilizer very precisely where it needs to be, and being able to cut back where they can there and get the output or the outcome that they're looking for is yield. I also had a few customers that were working with See and Spray with John Deere, and what they were coming back with was some of the fields ended up being sprayed at 20-30% of what would have normally been 100%. And that savings alone in the chemistry was pretty huge for them, let alone the yield potential that we're no longer making the whole crop metabolize that chemistries that we're putting out there. So it opened my eyes to, hey, sometimes, from a retailer perspective or from a manufacturer perspective, it isn't about selling more, how much more can we get on that farm? It's more about how can we help that farmer get to the outcome that they're looking for, which is yield. And if we could help them along the way, that's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. Talk more about that, because here you are seeing, these top producers that are using less inputs, and you kind of go join an ag retailer that traditionally, one of the KPIs, I'm sure, is like selling more products. So I know you just said, like, really, if the farmer's succeeding, we're succeeding, but talk about how that happens and how you make sure that you all are successful through that kind of changing environment.
When we're thinking about implementing a new strategy or a new technology, obviously there's some cost involved in that, and it's going to cost us more than doing it the old-fashioned way. So we have to get pretty creative with how we can value capture ourselves. So when we're thinking about how we implement new technology like this, we're looking at what is the farmer gaining, where is the true value, and how can we share in that. And at the flip side, you also have to think about never allowing it to become adverse for the farmer. that it goes towards a negative path for them. So we've implemented a strategy where we're developing a savings share approach, where if a farmer saves X amount, we're taking a portion of that, which allows us to be sustainable in this new technology and still be that win-win-win for everybody.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. So you're helping them save money in the process. You're incentivized to help them save.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly right. And at the same time, too, if we're helping the farmer along with the savings, that's one thing. But if we can get that grower to have more yield, that's really the ultimate goal that we're after.
Yeah. And talk about the ways that, Chandler Co-op's going about that. I know you said since October, so less than a year still, but we're coming up on a year, I guess. What types of things have you been implementing to that end?
With my sales team, I'm really cautious of doing a very detailed plan, from start to finish. Where can we help this farmer from the start of fertilizer through seed, through chemistry, and what does that look like on the outcome? So when it comes to crop protection, we're looking at what can we do to have a pretty stout pre out there, a pre-emerge chemistry, and then come back with a see and spray type of approach. The path that we've taken with Sentera, SmartScript, and with John Deere See and Spray, we're able to not just have one See and Spray sprayer. We're now able to enable any sprayer that we have that has exact apply and RTK to become a See and Spray sprayer, or site-specific sprayer is what we like to call it at Chandler. So yeah, I think for us, it's moving down that path of doing really intense planning to understand where we can help a farmer, and then plugging in the tools that we have here to help them get to their goals.
Yeah, I think most listening will be familiar with See and Spray or kind of site-specific spraying, as you called it. SmartScript might be new to some listeners. So can you explain what exactly that is and where that fits into the process?
So where SmartScript fits in with us at Chandler Co-op is we're able to take this drone that has a very advanced camera system and RTK system, and we go and we fly the field. We bring back the data, which is very large, as it takes a long time for us to upload that actually, but it's an intense amount of data. And what we're able to do with that is we're able to really understand exactly where the weeds are, to what densities they are, even the specifics of what the weeds are, whether they're water hemp, giant ragweed, what percent of them are grasses. And then we can take that back with our sales agronomists, understand, hey, what's the next course? What do we do here next? What chemistry program do we need to go and kill the weeds that are out there and keep the farmer in a good spot? We then go ahead and we execute that plan. What is unique about Sentera is it allows us to get that data up front before we go treat the field. And then we're able to go execute that plan that's very precise. We now know even how to load the sprayer, to what degree. Whereas with our other path, or with John Deere See and Spray, we're loading full batches, knowing that we're going to go to the next and carry product over to the next. We're able to have a detailed plan that's customizable for that specific field to have the best chance of success for that farmer.
And can you talk more about why that's valuable? Why not just kind of load the tank, have some left over?
At this day and age, I'm sure farmers that are listening, they're pulling their hair out trying to kill weeds right now in soybeans, right? And even though our options are limited in soybeans, it's a similar situation with corn in some respect. And if we think about going out there and spraying and you just pray to make sure that the weeds are going to die, versus a plan where you understand exactly what's out in that field and you can add this other chemistry or this other active ingredient to ensure that we're going to kill that weed, and yet only spray them specific areas that have to be treated instead of the whole field, there's a huge benefit there.
Well, I know, ag retail can be a pretty competitive, marketplace. Can you talk about how this approach to technology helps, Chandler Co-op differentiate yourself in that competitive landscape?
So for us, we've got a lot of overhead with the amount of people that we have to help with our farmers deliver products. which doesn't fit well if you're a cash and carry or if you have a cash and carry next to you, right? There's always going to be an opportunity for the cash and carry to have decreased margin that we can't have. We need to have the margin to pay for the people that we have and the equipment. So where this strategy really fits in is if we think about what we're doing with our farmers with See and Spray or Sentera Smart Script, we are able to save that farmer X amount of dollars. And let's say we end up spraying 40% of the field. Well, in reality, that's like taking 60% off of that product that you're positioning with that farmer, right? And on top of that, we are increasing the opportunity for more yield because we're not spraying that whole crop. So for us, it's a differentiator because we're going down a path of opportunity and more yield versus selling the jug of chemical for minimal margin.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Did it worry you at all when you heard that John Deere had acquired Sentera?
You know, it really didn't. In fact, it reinforced the value that we saw in Sentera. Obviously, John Deere did as well. We thought from the start that there was some great synergies between the two. You know, if we think about being proactive and going to check out the field before you actually go spray it, that's definitely, there's some value there. And also with John Deere See and Spray, we have the opportunity to go and cover mass acres and still be very good stewards of the chemistry and the technology and the yield that we're after. So, you know, between the two pathways, it just makes a lot of sense. I do think that eventually we will be using the Sentera drone instead of having our crop scouts and our four-wheelers out in these fields, you know, writing notes. We're going to be able to fly these fields and we're going to have all of the statistical data that we need to make a good sound decision. So not worried at all.
And what was the process like to implement this? You know, did you try it kind of here and there and then kind of ramp it up eventually? Or what did that look like for you guys? Because I know when it's go time for you, it's probably go time.
It definitely is. Absolutely. You know, so the first thing you got to do is anytime you're going to implement a change in a process or a change in how you're going to approach something, you have to get people on board. You know, so me as a new manager from October coming in, talking about, hey, you know, this is an opportunity for us. I have my sales team looking at me like, hey, we have never done this before, and I'm not so sure about it, right? So what it took was a lot of meetings, lots of conversation about, hey, this is maybe the way we're going to implement this problem, or this is a hurdle that we're going to jump over, and this is how we're going to do it. How we came up with the value capture, that was later in the season when we had just enough conversations to understand, hey, this is really the path forward. So it was a lot of meetings, lots of communication and different scenarios that we ran, and I got the sales team on board. The applicators, I'm blessed with having applicators that love technology, so they were on board right away. You know, so they were excited to see how this was going to work. Getting some of the feedback from them, you know, I've got a lot of Snapchats coming my way and a lot of videos on the sprayer boom turning on and off, and it was a really cool experience that way. Our farmers, there again, we had a meeting just to get the word out on what we're trying to do. I had our sales team go and talk to our customers and got them to try a few fields. And we did it kind of lightly because I wanted to make sure that we didn't overpromise and underdeliver. We got close, but we're still spraying a few See and Spray acres, site-specific acres with Sentera, and we've had some very good outcomes.
Very cool. And what was the learning curve like, or what does that look like for your employees to be capable of kind of executing on this?
So the learning curve, like I said, we started February, March with a lot of these conversations, and I would say it took a good 3 months to get them over the curve that hey, this is the way we're going to do this. Even when it came to executing an application, that was one thing, but how do we bill for it? It is complex to understand how do we cost share and make sure that we're using the right numbers to put that appropriate charge on. So it's taken some time. I think, the full season, to be quite honest, we're still calling it a pilot. Next year, it's going to be a full commercial offering for us. And I think the team is very well trained by this point.
This may be a stupid question. I apologize in advance if it is, but do you show the farmer the map, or are they just wanting the outcome of like, hey, help me manage these weeds?
That's a great question. What I would say is if we're going to do a savings share, transparency is key. We got to show them everything. We got to show them what the applications were. We got to show them the math on how we arrived at where we're at. We have to have everybody feeling good about what the outcomes were and how we were compensated and what the farmer had to pay for. Because without the farmer, we got nothing, right? So we need to make sure transparency's up and front centered. And that's boded well for us.
Well, I want to go back to something that you talked about earlier. Apologize if I have you repeat anything that you already said, but when you were talking about needing to align the incentives here of like, hey, this is a different approach to agronomy, but it's better for the farmer and we want it to be better for the co-op as well. What was the farmer reaction to that? I mean, you seem like you're kind of on the cutting edge of like new ways to value the role of a trusted advisor, to the amount of detail you can share. What was the plan you came up with and what was the farmer's reaction to that?
So that's a great question. I would say that the farmer's reaction initially was, hey, this is an opportunity for me to spend less money on crop protection. Even though we're taking into what the savings were and splitting that or, taking a percentage of that was the initial reaction. Now, I do imagine that as time goes on, they're going to look at those savings and they're going to look at that application charge and they're going to want, a bigger piece of that. But right now, our farmers are very happy that they're spending less money on their crop protection application. I do believe as time goes on, we're able to prove that we can get more yield out of this approach. I feel as if the farmers is going to steer their vision towards that outcome rather than just killing weeds. So yeah, it's been pretty positive actually. Some farmers are, it takes a little bit longer to work through the calculation because it's a different approach, and we've never been charging this way, if you will. But overall, it's been very good.
Very cool. No, I appreciate you sharing that because I think that a lot of people are wondering how we create better business models for this kind of different future. You mentioned getting more yield out of this. For us non-agronomists out there, can you explain to us, like we're five, how this might lead to better yields?
So we've got a few trials out there where we did half of the field with the site-specific spraying approach and the other half broadcast. We've all seen it where we go and we apply a field and we have white flash, whether if it's mesotrione on corn or, you have some kind of a visual effect. Well, that crop has to be metabolizing that chemistry, and to what degree does it cost us yield? We don't really know. There's a few studies out there that are saying, 3 to 5 bushels. I don't know exactly, but we are excited to see what our own data will suggest in this new approach. You start talking about 5 bushels, you start doing the math on that. I mean, that pays for the whole crop protection application. It's pretty serious. You had asked earlier, how does this fit into our strategy? Well, if we can help a farmer get to that spot where they're getting enough yield to pay for their crop protection application, that's huge.
Absolutely is. Yeah. And I have this annoying habit where I hear something I think is really cool, and so I have to ask the question about like, what else can this do? But is there any hope that this might lead to fungicide applications as well, or is it pretty focused on weeds for now?
Site-specific spraying for fungicide, I do believe at some point these camera systems are going to get really good to be able to detect where our higher concentrations of fungal diseases will be. We haven't really dove into that yet, but what it does do is if we're able to help a farmer currently save money on the crop protection pass, they will then reallocate that dollar and go towards a fungicide application if they weren't planning on it before. So there again, we're helping incentivize more yield by allocating the dollars where more yield will be the outcome.
And it's probably too early to tell, but I'm curious if this kind of innovative approach to ag retail, if it's attracting, new customers or customers that maybe weren't using you all for all of their needs, saying like, oh, a program like that would actually fit what I'm trying to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely is. It's caught the eye of a lot of farmers who we do business with, but also a lot of farmers who we haven't. There's a lot of crop consultants around the area that I've met with personally or had a conversation with personally that are very intrigued with this new approach. So it absolutely will. There again, we have to make sure that we could get the work done and not overpromise and underdeliver. But we definitely feel the need to ramp up. So we have the ability to take on more acres because it feels like it's coming.
And does this change the profile of the ideal employee for you all in terms of sales or applicators? I mean, does it change kind of like the type of people that you want on the team based on the new approach of how you serve farmers?
It absolutely does. Yeah, we need individuals who are willing to embrace technology. We need them to have a growth mindset where they can continue to learn because what we see today isn't necessarily what we're going to have tomorrow. This technology is going to continue to evolve. One of the hurdles that we needed to get over initially was we needed to get a couple of our employees with FAA certification, so they're able to legally fly these drones. That isn't an easy process. It was 3 weeks of studying up, and then it was a 100-question test that they needed to go and complete. So there is a need to have qualified individuals that are willing to learn and able to learn and embracing technology for sure.
And I realize this isn't a Sentera offering, but I'm curious, have you looked at any drone spraying for some of the site-specific spraying?
That's definitely on the horizon. For us in Southwest Minnesota, we have big fields. They could be 160 acres, 320 acres. And we look at drone application, which is really cool. However, isn't really applicable when we're trying to get a lot of acres done, those really large fields. But I do believe that using an approach with Sentera, we're able to identify exactly where the weeds are, which would allow for a drone to be a lot more efficient about where it's flying and where it's spraying. So all of a sudden it maybe opens a door on that side of application.
And I assume you all have a board of farmers that you all ultimately report to, the team at Chandler Co-op. Were they already thinking kind of tech forward before they hired you, or was that part of you saying like, hey, if you hire me, here's what you're going to get? Or I'm just curious about kind of, obviously the push for technology strategy is coming from you, but I'm curious if it's coming from higher up as well.
Absolutely. We've got a great board. They're very forward looking. They're very progressive. They did have a See and Spray sprayer last year. The team didn't do much with it a year ago, as it was pretty brand new. And like I told you at the beginning, the amount of communicating the plan and meeting with the sales team and the applicators to ensure that everybody felt good about it really led to us using this technology. So when we had that investment a year ago and we didn't use it to its full capabilities, there was a lot of questions I had to answer on why I wanted to do it again. So yeah, they're very forward looking, but they're also very shrewd in their decision making, which I'm very proud of because we are where we are today because of that mindset. So 100%, we do have a progressive board, but yeah, it maybe gave them a little bit of a push.
Makes sense. Outside of this site-specific spraying, smart script story, what other technology are you either trying to implement or at least have your eye on for maybe future use? Anything else?
We've been using BRT application fertilizer for years now. We still use that to this day. We want to ensure that we're being good stewards of our plant nutrition and making sure that our fertilizer isn't ending up in places where it doesn't need to be. So definitely continuing on with that and trying to get better with some of the software that we're using to ensure that we truly are being good stewards of that technology, using it to its full ability. But yeah, I do believe that with what Sentera has opened the door to, we will then move towards having more of these drones, like I had mentioned, taking the place of the four-wheeler and the consultant that we have at Chandler, and turning that consultant into a pilot who can then go and fly these fields and get the data that we need. I do believe that that's the next step in capturing that data. So it's going to be a few years that we're working to get that down.
Well, kind of what's next? I know you said you're still calling it a pilot. What comes next in the implementation of SmartScript and site-specific spraying? What's the next milestone you want to hit from your vantage point?
So we rolled into this in February, March, and we're at where we are today. It's been a great journey so far. But what we're able to do now is really gear our crop protection offerings to play into a see and spray or a site-specific spraying approach, even more than what we have today. So what that means for us is that means having really stout pre's up front. That helps us not have to kill more weeds that are up if we're going to use a site-specific way of spraying, and then making sure that we've got good chemistry that, as the offering that's going to kill the weeds that are up through site-specific spraying. And that really starts right now. We're filling for the next crop year. So that's where we're at now. It's also allowed for an opportunity for us, just this environment that we're in currently with trying to kill weeds has just been very difficult, that we ensure that we're not putting all of our eggs in one program basket, if you will. We're looking at different segments of crop protection offerings, different actives to ensure that our farmers have choice, and we are not putting ourselves all in one program that if it doesn't work, all of a sudden our workload got really intense.
Makes a lot of sense. And jumping back a little bit to kind of coming up with what's the business model for this kind of site-specific spraying, did you have peers, mentors in the industry that you can go to, be like, hey, how are you guys handling this? Because this is brand new and we need to find a way to make it a win-win for everybody. Did you have people you could talk to, and what ultimately helped you arrive at where you landed?
So Joel Walsh, he's with Sentera. He was with Bayer with me, and he's been a great mentor where I could bounce ideas off of him. He would do the same thing, and that's where we got to this cost or this saving share rather of value capture. Outside of that, no, there wasn't too many individuals that we could reach out to as this technology is that new. I recently learned of somebody in Nebraska that I'm going to reach out to that is doing something similar to what we're doing with John Deere See and Spray. But yeah, no, it's a pretty lonely world when it comes to site-specific spraying at the retail level. I do expect that to change, though. I think this technology is going to blow up. I think there's too much value there to ignore, and I think honestly, when we think about crop protection and some of the regulations that are coming down the pathway or still are really, we're going to have to be extremely good stewards of how we're using this chemistry. So that's going to help us be sustainable in the regulatory market as well.
Yeah, and I was expecting today's episode, to be about the cost savings of site specific. I think that would be missing the story here, though, which is like it's kind of on you retailers to figure out what's a way to implement this so that it works for everybody involved, and that's no easy feat. I mean, you figured it out here, but it makes me think about other technologies we talk about that you guys are day to day having to figure out how do we all make money at this.
Absolutely, no, it's a very complex but yet interesting topic, and it's been a fun place to be. Thinking about regulatory, one of the initiatives that the Minnesota Department of Agriculture has been discussing was acetylchlorine water. And, if we think about acetylchlorine water, it's because we're putting on a lot of acetylchlor on these acres. Site-specific spraying allows us to still utilize acetylchlor, but yet be more specific where we are spraying our post applications, which should help with environmental issues like what the MDA is worried about with acetylchlorine water. So I really look for this to be great, a great tool for us to be good stewards of the chemistries that we have and ensure longevity of these tools.
Yeah. Very cool. I mean, the question coming to my mind is kind of framing the whole episode as like, what's the business model for less, right? We know what the business model is for more, right? Sell more. We don't know what the business model is for less in all cases, but you're certainly finding it because that's where it's not less value, it's more value, but just less product.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's hard to think about, right? That was one of the pushbacks I got from people in the industry was, how are you going to make up for the margin you're going to lose on the non-sprayed acre? So through lots of conversation, we decided to go down the savings share path, and it's been good so far.
All right, well, that is where we are going to wrap up today's episode right there. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much to Nick Einck for being on the show. This, to me, is really what this series of Tech-Enabled Advisor is all about, because we can have great innovations, great technologies that have meaningful impact, but in order to really get carried out, to be sort of seamlessly inserted into this massive agricultural system, there needs to be models for incentives. There needs to be a way for the co-ops to make money and remain viable as well, those delivering this technology. So really appreciate Nick being so candid with how they're working through this. And I think he's on the cutting edge of how retailers are going to have to adapt to ag technology that will change the game. So thank you so much to Nick. Thank you as well to Sentera for partnering with me on this episode. If your company sells technology to some sort of advisor that works with farmers, and you might be interested in partnering with me on a future Tech-Enabled Advisor episode, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you about that and see if it's a fit on both ends. Last but never least, thank you for your time and your attention. I don't take it lightly. I'll be back next week with another story of ag innovation.